Welcome back to The Behavior Code, the podcast that deciphers the why behind what we do. I'm your host, Maria.
And I'm Gabriel. It's good to be here.
So, Gabriel, I want to start with a question for everyone listening. Have you ever walked away from an interaction feeling small or maybe just undervalued? Like someone just talked over you or dismissed your idea or was just plain rude?
I mean, who hasn't? I think that's a universal human experience. You have a conversation with a friend and you realize you spend 20 minutes listening to their problems, and the second you start to talk about your day, they're suddenly looking at their phone.
Yes, that, exactly. Or a coworker who takes credit for your work. Or a family member who always makes that one little critical comment that just stings. It happens all the time.
And you're left wondering, why me? Why do they do that?
Exactly. And we often blame them. We think that person is just a jerk. But what if, and this is the big idea for today's episode, what if it's less about them and more about us?
Ooh, okay, that's a challenging thought.
It is, but it's also incredibly empowering. The central theme today is this: people learn how to treat you based on what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you reinforce.
Wow. Say that again. People learn how to treat you based on what you allow. That really reframes the whole dynamic, doesn't it? It puts the power back in your hands.
Completely. It shifts you from being a passive victim of other people's behavior to an active participant in your relationships. It's not about blame, it's about understanding the mechanics of how respect is earned and maintained. And that's what we're going to dive into.
I'm in. Let's get into the psychology of this because it's not just a nice saying, right? There's actual behavioral science behind it.
Oh, absolutely. It's rooted in one of the most fundamental concepts of psychology.
Right. It's called behavioral reinforcement. It sounds complex, but the idea is actually incredibly simple. Any behavior that is followed by a rewarding or a non negative consequence is more likely to be repeated.
Okay, so break that down. A non negative consequence. That could just be nothing, right? Like silence.
Exactly. Silence is a huge reinforcer. Let's go back to that friend who's always late. The first time they're 10 minutes late, you don't say anything because you don't want to make a fuss.
Right, you want to be the cool friend. Chill.
Yeah, but in that silence, you've just reinforced their behavior. You've taught them, my time isn't that valuable. A 10-minute delay has no negative consequence. So the next time, maybe it's 15 minutes, then 20. Before you know it, it's just accepted that they'll be half an hour late for everything.
And you get more and more resentful, but you feel like you can't say anything now because it's been going on for so long. You've created a pattern. You've allowed it.
Precisely. The lack of correction is perceived as acceptance. And this isn't to say the other person is, a monster. They're just operating based on the feedback you're giving them or the feedback you're not giving them.
It's like every relationship is a silent negotiation of rules: what's okay and what's not okay. If you don't state your rules, people will just assume there are none.
That is the perfect way to put it. You're constantly teaching people how to interact with you. The coworker who interrupts you in meetings, if you just stop talking and let them take over every time, you've taught them that their voice is more important than yours.
Wow, okay, it's a lot to take in, because you start replaying like 1,000 interactions in your head.
It is, but the solution, the way we interrupt this cycle, is actually it's a concept we've all heard of, but maybe we don't fully understand its power in this context.
Let me guess, is it boundaries?
It's all about boundaries.
So, boundaries aren't about building walls or pushing people away, right? That's the common misconception.
Not at all. In fact, they do the opposite. Healthy boundaries make healthy relationships possible. I like to think of them as the user manual for you. They teach people how to interact with you respectfully. They are the clear, kind instructions for how to maintain a good relationship with
A user manual for you. I love that. So, let's make this practical. What does this look like in, say, a work environment? Because that's where a lot of these lines get blurred.
Okay, a classic example. Your boss emails you at 10 o'clock at night expecting an immediate response. The first time it happens, you jump on it because you want to be a good employee. What did you just taught your boss?
That I'm always available, my personal time isn't really my own.
Right. A boundary would be not responding until the next morning, or even better, having a conversation. I'm fully focused on work during my hours of 9 to 5, but to be at my best, I need to disconnect in the evenings. You're not being difficult, you're setting a reasonable expectation. You're teaching them how to respect your time.
Okay, what about in friendships? I think that can be even trickier. Let's say you have a friend who always cancels plans at the last minute.
And your default reaction is probably, oh, no worries, we'll do it another time, reinforcement.
Totally. So, what's the boundary?
The boundary is expressing how it affects you, kindly but clearly. Hey, when you cancel last minute, it messes up my plans, and honestly, it makes me feel like my time isn't valued. I understand things come up, but if this becomes a pattern, I won't be able to make plans with you as often.
Oof, that's a hard conversation to have, but I see how it works. You're not attacking them, you're explaining the consequences of their actions on you. You're defining the terms of the friendship.
You are, and in a romantic relationship, it's even more critical. Things like how you speak to each other. If your partner makes a joke at your expense that hurts your feelings and you just laugh it off,
You've just taught them that it's okay to do that.
yes. The boundary is saying, I know you probably didn't mean it to be hurtful, but that kind of joke doesn't work for me. Please don't do it again. That clarity is what builds respect. Without it, resentment just grows in the silence.
This makes so much sense, but it leads to a question. Why do people push in the first place? If these boundaries are so important, why do we constantly find them being, tested?
That is a fantastic question because it gets to the heart of human dynamics. And I think the first thing to say is it's not always malicious.
Right, like your boss sending the late night email might just be clearing their inbox before they go to bed. It might not be a calculated move to ruin your evening.
Exactly. A lot of the time, people are just wrapped up in their own world, their own needs. They aren't thinking about your boundaries because, well, why would they? You've never told them where the boundaries are. It's an undrawn line.
So part of it is just a lack of information.
A big part. But there's another layer. There is a natural human tendency to test limits. It happens both consciously and subconsciously. We are all to some degree trying to figure out the rules of engagement in any given situation.
It sounds like a toddler. They push the cup closer and closer to the edge of the table, looking at their parent the whole time. They're not just trying to make a mess, they're trying to understand what happens if I do this? Where is the line?
That is the perfect analogy. We don't grow out of that. It just becomes more sophisticated. We're trying to understand a social landscape. We ask for a small favor to see if the person is helpful. We make a slightly edgy joke to gauge their sense of humor. We see how late we can be before someone says something.
We're gathering data.
Constantly. It's about figuring out what we can get away with, for lack of a better term. And when we find someone who has no lines, no pushback, it can be, on a subconscious level, unsettling for some. For others, it's a green light to keep pushing.
So the people who consistently test you, they're not necessarily bad people. They're just explorers who found a land with no fences.
Some are, yes. They've learned that this is how they get their needs met. And if you don't provide any friction or any structure, they'll just keep going. It's the path of least resistance. People are fundamentally wired to conserve energy, and it takes more energy to be considerate of unstated needs than it does to just focus on your own.
This makes me think about the whole idea of being too nice. The people pleaser. We're sort of taught that being nice and agreeable is the goal, but from what you're saying, it can be a huge liability.
It's one of the greatest paradoxes of social interaction. The intense desire to be liked often leads directly to being disrespected.
So let's talk about that. The cost of being too nice. What are the behaviors we're talking about here?
Well, the big one is always saying yes. Yes to extra projects at work, yes to social events you don't want to go to, yes to favors that inconvenience you.
Another one is apologizing for everything. I'm sorry, but can I just ask a quick question? Or sorry to bother you. You apologize for taking up space.
Yes, that one is huge, and the overarching theme is avoiding conflict at all costs. You'd rather swallow your own feelings, your own discomfort, than risk someone else being momentarily upset with you.
And the crazy thing is, you do all this because you think it will earn you respect and appreciation. You think if I'm always helpful and easygoing, people will value me.
But it does the exact opposite. Why? Because when you never say no, your yes becomes meaningless. It's just the default. It's not a choice, it's an expectation.
And when you're constantly apologizing, you're